Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the last part of today's session. Before the break, we had discussed insurgency in Nagaland. We understood the root causes, how the movement spread, what threat it posed to India, and how India dealt with the threat. Now, I want to discuss the last point, that is, why the Naga peace process has not succeeded. Why has there been a delay in arriving at a final deal to end the Naga insurgency? That is the big question, because this topic is in current affairs. So UPSC might ask you a question either on the background of Naga insurgency or on the ongoing Naga peace process, which is going on from 2015 till date. So you should be prepared for this topic. Now you know the background. Now let's understand what issues have cropped up with regard to the Naga peace process. To conduct these negotiations, the government of India appointed its envoy. The government representative was R.N. Ravi, a former IPS officer who had spent almost his entire career as an intelligence officer. He was a top intelligence officer with the IB, with Intelligence Bureau. He retired as the special secretary to the IB, and he has been a specialist in Northeast India. Throughout his intelligence career, he has dealt with Northeast insurgency, particularly Naga insurgency. He has personally led many intelligence operations of the IB to target these insurgent groups. So R.N. Ravi, after his retirement from IPS, that is from the IB, he was appointed as the envoy of the government, as the representative of the government, to lead the talks with NSCN, IM, and the Naga groups. And to facilitate the talks and to also raise the authority of R.N. Ravi, he was appointed as the governor of Nagaland. Since the state government was also party to the negotiations, right? The Indian government appointed R.N. Ravi as the governor of the state and also as the special envoy to lead these talks with NSCN IM and the other Naga political groups. Initially, the talks started out on a good note. Both the sides were meeting regularly, discussing the issues, the concerns, the demands, how they could be satisfied, etc. But then issues started cropping up between the negotiators. The major issue was the unreasonable demand that NSCN IM was raising. It has been raising certain unreasonable demands which the government says cannot be met. For example, NSCN IM wants a separate constitution for Nagaland. It wants a separate flag and a higher degree of autonomy to be provided to Nagaland with constitutional status. These are some of the unreasonable demands raised by NSCN IM. Now, these demands were not acceptable to the governor, to R.N. Ravi. R.N. Ravi, as the government representative, rejected the demands because politically this is not feasible for the ruling BJP to accept these demands. Why? In Jammu and Kashmir, the government has taken a political stand that it opposes such flexibility. When Article 370 was revoked, and even before that, the ruling BJP has always ideologically opposed the provision of a separate constitution and a separate flag. The BJP has always said that this weakens the integrity of the nation. That has been their political ideology. So when they are opposing it for J&K and later they revoked it for J&K, how can they meet the same demand for Nagaland? That will be contradicting themselves in front of the electorate. So politically, it's not possible for the ruling BJP at the center to accept and meet these demands. So R.N. Ravi outright rejected the demands and said that separate constitution is not possible. Separate flag is not possible. But however, we can provide autonomy. That has always been the stand since 1947. Even under Akbar Hydari Agreement, under Shillong Accord, we had promised constitutional autonomy. We are ready to fulfill that. We will provide more funds for the development of Nagaland. We will provide more flexibility, more decentralization, so that you can look after your own administration. So autonomy is fine, but separate constitution, separate flag is unacceptable to India. Politically, it's not feasible to the Indian government. So as the demands were rejected by the governor, NSCN-IM got more aggressive. It started blaming the governor for derailing the talks. This led to differences between both the sides, and R.N. Ravi went public and wrote a very controversial column in the Hindu. When he was the governor of Nagaland, when he was leading the talks a few years ago, he wrote an open column in the Hindu, which was published by the Hindu. And here R.N. Ravi alleged that NSCN-IM is behaving like a criminal gang. These were legitimate points raised by R.N. Ravi. Because NSCN-IM, even though it has given up insurgency, it is still resorting to organized criminal activities in Nagaland and in Northeast India. It carries out extortion. It threatens local businessmen, industrialists, and politicians and extorts money from them. It extorts ransom by issuing threats, by kidnapping people. If they don't pay ransoms, either they'll be kidnapped or they might be killed by the armed members of NSCN-IM. It is still involved in smuggling of drugs and arms into the region, because this brings a lot of money into the hands of the insurgent group. Even though they have surrendered, they're not supposed to engage in such activities, they are still doing it on the ground. They even block highways, stop the trucks carrying goods towards Manipur and other parts of Northeast India, and they extract illegal taxes from the truck drivers. Whoever doesn't pay the ransom, they will be targeted by the group. So the governor openly wrote about it and called NSCN-IM as a criminal gang. He said, how can government negotiate with such criminals? This outraged NSCN-IM, and they started demanding that R.N. Ravi should be removed. With R.N. Ravi, the negotiations cannot continue. This was the position of the Naga leaders. So this led to a stalemate in the talks. This was the crisis which derailed the peace process. Finally, the government moved out R.N. Ravi. R.N. Ravi was removed as the governor. He was removed from the political dialogue process, and he was appointed as the governor of Tamil Nadu. But there, R.N. Ravi has created a separate controversy altogether. I'm sure you would be aware of it if you're reading newspapers, if you're in touch with current affairs. As the governor of Tamil Nadu, he has not approved some of the bills passed by the Legislative Assembly. He has reserved some of the bills for the consideration of the president. So this has led the Tamil Nadu government to allege that R.N. Ravi is acting like an agent of the BJP, that he is deliberately blocking bills passed by the Legislative Assembly, which is a misuse of the office of the governor. Tamil Nadu has even approached the Supreme Court. So wherever R.N. Ravi has went as the governor, he has created a controversy. Again, let's not judge or let's not pass just blanket statements. What he has done is right or wrong. But the important point to understand here is that as the lead negotiator, R.N. Ravi could not make progress. But of course, he alone cannot be blamed for it. NSCN-IM was raising unreasonable demands, as I told you. I'm presenting you both sides of the argument. It was acting like a criminal group, still involved in extortion, criminal activities, which is a threat to the security of the state. So, because of these disputes, right, the peace process has gotten derailed. It's not come to an end, but it has hit a stalemate. It's like a dead end. Now that elections are going to be held, in the last few months, there has been no progress. But once elections are completed, or you never know, maybe even before elections, the peace process might make some progress. Because in the last few weeks, within the last 1 month, we have signed two major deals. Government of India has signed peace deals with ULFA, with UNLF. This happened just a few days back, just few weeks ago. So this is tremendous progress with regard to Northeast insurgency. Peace deals have been worked out with two major insurgent groups. You never know, even before 2024 elections are announced, maybe Naga peace deal might be finalized. And if it doesn't happen, it will be picked up after the elections and we might see progress in the later part of 2024. So that is why the topic becomes important. You should know the background of the insurgency, what has derailed the peace process, what are the issues, and what should be the way forward. Is that clear? So this completes my detailed discussion of Naga insurgency. This is more than enough. Clear? If you have any doubts, any questions, please let me know. I'll try to answer any doubts, any questions. And then we'll start with the next state. We'll look at Assam. Assam is a little more complicated. It's a much bigger topic because there are multiple insurgencies in Assam to study. Ghulam Mustafa says, sir, he has been the most controversial governor. I agree to an extent because, as I said, both in Nagaland and Tamil Nadu, R.N. Ravi has created controversies. But again, we wouldn't judge him, but that's just one side of the allegation, one side of the argument. Avani is asking full form of UNLF and ULFA. We'll come to it, don't worry. That is the next discussion. Right now, I'm going to explain ULFA insurgency. We'll discuss that in detail. Later, tomorrow, we'll talk about UNLF from Manipur. We'll discuss all the topics. It will come up one by one. Kanchana is asking, sir, was Manipur included in Ahom kingdom? No. Manipur was ruled by the Manipuri kingdom, by the Meitei rulers. It was a separate Meitei Hindu kingdom. Ahom was separate, which covered large parts of Assam and Northeast India. But Manipur, the Manipuri kingdom, the princely state, was a separate kingdom altogether. Nikhil has a very good point. Sir, no clap can be done by a single hand. Both the government and NSCN are equally to be blamed for the controversy. Absolutely. I agree with you. The problem comes from both the sides. Prithvi is asking, the Naga peace process is from 2015 to 24. What is the meaning of this date, this timing? I just wrote the number of years it has taken for the peace process to continue. And we still don't have a deal. It started in 2015. The negotiations are still going on, right? We're in 2024. It's been almost 9 years right now. So the process is still continuing. That's why I just wrote the time period. This is the period during which the peace talks have been taking place. Aditya is asking, sir, timing has changed for weekend batch? No, timing has not changed. We just took an extra class today. It's not an extra class because if you remember, I wasn't keeping well the last weekend, and we had cancelled one of the classes. So we just compensated for it today by starting early in the morning. Tomorrow we'll have an extra class. So that is just an extra class, and today was a compensation for the first class. So timing has not changed. Weekend timing is the same. Saturday is 12 to 8. Sunday is 10 to 8. That is the standard timing. So today we took a class to compensate for the first cancelled class. Tomorrow I'll be taking an extra class in the morning. All right. So guys, these were the questions. Now, let's take up another interesting topic. Let's look at insurgency in Assam. It's a big topic, very important for the exams, especially for your mains, because Assam has been hit by multiple insurgencies. There have been different insurgent groups, their demands are different, their issues are different. So we have to spend some time on this topic to carefully understand each and every insurgent movement. First, I will start with ULFA's insurgency. Let's discuss the insurgency led by ULFA, and then we'll discuss the other topics from Assam. Now, as you know, Assam was a very large province under the British colonial government. It included Nagaland, it included Mizoram, Meghalaya, right? All these were part of the large state of Assam itself. In this region, right, the native ethnic group are the Assamese. They are the most dominant ethnic group all across Northeast India. Their political and economic influence comes from the days of the Ahom kingdom. As I was discussing, the Ahom kingdom was a major kingdom here in medieval times. And the Assamese, right, who are part of the Ahom kingdom, they are present in larger numbers. Thus, they are one of the majority communities here. And they have been politically, economically influential. Many other smaller ethnic groups and tribes have issues with Assamese because they feel that Assamese have dominated over them. They feel that Assamese have discriminated against the smaller groups. But here, with regard to Ulfa's insurgency, we have to understand the root cause. Why was this insurgent movement formed? Why did this group start a violent war against India? Right? What was the reason behind it? This insurgency was led by Assamese, a few radicalized members of Assamese community. They declared this insurgent war against India. It was a separatist movement. Ulfa was a separatist movement which wanted to break Assam from India to form Assam as a separate country, a separate nation for the Assamese. So why did they take this extreme step? What was the cause for the start of this separatist movement? That is something we should understand. See, Assam, being a border state, it has received a big influx of refugees and later illegal migrants. Correct? Because during the partition of India-Pakistan, when Punjab and Bengal were partitioned between India-Pakistan, there was a huge inflow of refugees from East Pakistan, which is today's Bangladesh, into Northeast India, particularly into Assam. Accepting refugees was a different issue altogether because that's a human right obligation, because refugees are running away from a conflict, right? They're being targeted. So to save their lives, they are entering another country seeking asylum. So accepting refugees, protecting them is an international obligation. It's a humanitarian obligation. So in 1947, during partition, there was a large influx of refugees into Assam, right? Then from 1960s to 1971, when Bengalis were targeted by the Pakistani army, we again saw a major influx of refugees into Northeast India, particularly into Assam. Because in East Pakistan, the Bengalis were discriminated, both Bengali Hindus and Bengali Muslims. The Pakistani army, dominated by the Punjabi elite from West Pakistan, they discriminated against East Pakistan and the Bengalis. This systemic discrimination and oppression triggered a crisis in East Pakistan, and it led to the liberation of Bangladesh movement. The Pakistani army tried to crush this movement by targeting the Bengali supporters. Bengali community in general was targeted. Both Hindus and Muslims, they were not spared with the Pakistani army, and it almost committed a genocide inside East Pakistan. So before the 1971 war, before the targeted campaign began, we had already received a few refugees who had flown, who had moved across into India in order to protect themselves. So basically, until 1971, Assam and Northeast India, they had received Bengali refugees from East Pakistan. But after Bangladesh became independent, after India supported the liberation of Bangladesh movement, and we broke Pakistan into two parts, we started witnessing a major influx of illegal migrants coming from Bangladesh to India. Illegal migrants are those who are illegally crossing the border. There is no threat to their life. They're not refugees. They're only coming to another country illegally without a valid visa because they want a better life. They're looking for employment opportunities, livelihood opportunities. They want to improve their standard of living. Just like Indian illegal migrants enter US or European countries, from Bangladesh, we have received a lot of illegal migrants, particularly into Assam. Is that clear? Now, this constant influx of foreigners, outsiders, was seen as a threat by the Assamese, the native Assamese. They opposed the influx of outsiders on such a large scale. Their main opposition was not against refugees who had come before 1971. Their main opposition was against the illegal migrants who kept flowing in from Bangladesh. Because in independent Bangladesh, there was no development, no livelihood job opportunities. The Awami League government had been toppled with the assassination of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. The pro-India government had been removed, pro-India leader had been killed, and Bangladeshi army had taken over, establishing military rule in Bangladesh by 1975. This Bangladeshi army, which ruled the country under a military dictatorship, was a pro-Pakistan government. It hardly bothered about development and welfare. So throughout 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, India kept on receiving a wave of illegal migrants from Bangladesh. They would cross the border illegally because this is also a highly porous border. This is India's longest land border that we have with Bangladesh. There are many natural gaps. You have hilly mountainous areas, forested areas, riverine networks that break the border. So with the help of trafficking networks, human trafficking networks, many illegal migrants have crossed over, leading to a demographic problem in Northeast India. So native Assamese, they started opposing the large-scale entry of illegal migrants, especially in the border districts. The allegation was that this was changing the demography of Assam. Because when there is a large entry of outsiders who are foreigners, and when they are entering illegally into the country, obviously the locals, the natives will be worried, they'll be concerned. The population composition might change. So this will be a threat to the land and resources of the native community, right? These Bangladeshi illegal migrants, they were both Bengali Hindus and Bengali Muslims as well. Is that clear? But Assamese weren't bothered about their religion, right? Be it a Bengali Hindu or a Bengali Muslim, whoever is coming from Bangladesh, they were all seen as a threat by the native Assamese. There was no communal angle here. This was about entry of outsiders, foreigners coming in illegally, because this would change the population profile. Tomorrow, if the population keeps increasing, native Assamese will be under threat. They feared that their land will be taken away, their resources, their rights will be taken away. So this created resentment amongst the Assamese. And there were growing concerns that illegal migration is not being tackled by the government. Government of India, government of Assam were blamed by the Assamese for failing to prevent the large-scale illegal migration. This was the root of the problem. But the immediate trigger came later. What happened was, these illegal migrants who were entering Assam, right, they pretty much look like Indians. All South Asians, we all look pretty much the same, right? Be it a Pakistani, Sri Lankan, right, or a Maldivian, or even a Nepali, right? Even from someone from Bangladesh, India, we're all pretty much the same. It's hard to distinguish physically, right? So these illegal migrants who are entering in large numbers, they were already being perceived as a threat by the Assamese. Now, they started getting registered on the voters list. In Assam, state elections were scheduled in late 70s and also in 1983. During these state elections, it was noticed that many illegal migrants who had come from Bangladesh, They had gotten their names registered on the voters list. They even had a voter ID card. These were not fake documents. These were original documents issued through the Election Commission. How did this happen? A few politicians who were corrupt, who were greedy to win elections, they got the illegal migrants registered at the local level by corrupting the officials. They got few thousand illegal migrants registered in some key constituencies so that they could swing the elections in their favor. This was a clear attempt to carry out electoral manipulation. Understood? This was a quid pro quo arrangement, a mutually beneficial arrangement. Meaning the politician, the local political contestant, they would help the illegal migrants to get registered on the voters list. Right? That will give them a government document. By using the voter ID, the illegal migrant can get all the other documents done, thereby becoming an Indian citizen in few years. By using voter ID card, you can go open a bank account, tomorrow get a passport as well, and that's it. You're an Indian citizen. In return, these illegal migrants will vote for that politician and these parties, helping them win elections. This was the corrupt nexus that developed in Assam. There was a widespread allegation regarding this, which is true to a large extent because there was manipulation of the voters list. Many illegal migrants were listed as voters. They had official voter ID cards. Now this triggered the Assamese because tomorrow, if the state government is formed, right, and if many of the representatives who have won the elections, if they won because of votes from illegal migrants, they will be bound to serve their interests. They might come out with such policies which will benefit illegal migrants who voted for them, because that becomes a vote bank. They might enable them to acquire land, acquire property, to get more government benefits and privileges. So that would allow the illegal migrants to become more influential and dominant, which was seen as a threat by the Assamese. They also feared that this is a threat to Assamese culture because outsiders will bring new customs. And if there are interfaith, intercommunity marriages, right, essentially love marriages, this could weaken the native Assamese culture. Their language, their customs could be weakened due to the outside influence. So Assamese feared a threat to their cultural identity and even to their economic prospects and their political prospects. This was the immediate trigger. Is that clear? It's very simple, very easy to understand. So the Assamese saw this as a cultural, economic, and political threat to their interests. The changing demography was leading to socio-ethnic tensions. Socio-ethnic problems started creeping in. And it triggered a massive, violent protest, which is popularly called the Assam agitation. The Assamese, led by the Students' Union and the political parties, they united to launch a struggle for their rights. They launched the Assam agitation, also called the Assamese agitation, which started in 1979. This agitation turned violent very quickly. The protesters engaged in large-scale violence as the rumors spread that elections were being manipulated. So as the violent protests broke out, the government targeted the protesters with counter force. The state government and even the center, right? They targeted the protesters to curb the violence which was spreading. The state police, the Assam police, central forces were rushed in. Assam Rifles and CRPF were deployed. So large-scale force was used by the state to curb the violent protests, and this created further resentment amongst the Assamese. It triggered angry sentiments, right? The frustration which had built up, it all spilled over, and the violent protests continued until 1985. The main demand of the protesters was that they wanted NRC to be updated. You would have studied about NRC in polity and in current affairs, the National Register for Citizens. This is basically a list containing the names of Indian citizens in Assam. In 1951, after the partition was done, in order to identify who are Indian citizens and who are foreigners in Assam, an exercise was conducted called NRC, National Register for Citizens. So those whose names are listed in NRC, they are Indians. And the names which are left out, they are foreigners. This exercise was done only once in 1951, after the flow of refugees after the partition. Now the protesters were demanding that conduct NRC again, because there are a lot of illegal migrants who have come in. So it is important to identify who are Indians and who are foreigners in Assam. The protesters demanded NRC to be updated, and they wanted special rights. They wanted more privileges in the form of more funds, government reservation, etc., to be provided to the native Assamese. So these protests, which started in 1979, it went on until 1985. This is what we call as the Assam agitation. Finally, the government negotiated with the students' union, the Assamese, All India Assamese Students' Union, and other Assamese political groups, and it achieved a settlement called the Assam Accord. The Assam Accord was signed in 1985 that brought the violent agitation to an end. Under the Assam Accord, government promised that NRC will be updated, that we will conduct NRC to identify the foreigners. The government promised to set up a committee, a special committee, to recommend special rights and privileges for the Assamese so that they can be uplifted. They can be given more reservation, more government benefits in order to protect them from the outside influence. So all these commitments were made by the government, and Assam agitation came to an end in 1985 with signing of Assam Accord. But parallelly, in 1979, when Indian forces retaliated against the protesters and engaged in counter force was used against the protesters, some of the radical Assamese students who were part of the students' union, they broke away from the mainstream protests, they broke apart from the Assam agitation, and they founded an insurgent outfit called ULFA. This is how ULFA was born in 1979. It was born amidst the Assam agitation which had started against illegal migration from Bangladesh. That was the primary cause. ULFA stands for United Liberation Front of Assam. This is essentially a separatist group, a separatist movement. Very quickly, they raised funds, they got access to arms and weapons, and they declared a war against India. Their goal was to break Assam from India, as they blamed Indian government and Assamese government for all the problems. They wanted to break Assam and form it and establish Assam as a separate, independent, sovereign nation. So this outfit very quickly became a notorious threat to India, because in 1980s, it went on to carry out major attacks against India. It would target the police and security forces. It targeted civilians. It targeted the Bengali illegal migrants. It even targeted plantations, tea plantations, businesses and workers in Assam. Because in Assam, there were many industries, right? The tea plantation industry was one big industry. Then oil and gas industry, because there are hydrocarbon reserves present. These industries were targeted, and ULFA started extracting ransoms from them. It resorted to extortion. Major companies like Tata Tea and other important tea producing organizations which have tea plantations here, they were all threatened by Ulfa. They had to pay ransoms or else the factories, the workers would be targeted. They would kidnap plantation workers, kill some of them. They targeted some managers as well at factories to threaten them. They threatened the oil and petroleum companies working here and extracted ransoms from them. So very quickly, Ulfa became a notorious threat for India. And I'll tell you the irony about Ulfa. It took shelter in Bangladesh. This is ironic. It exposes the hypocrisy of these extremist organizations. Because see, what was the whole point of starting this insurgent war? Their whole point was that illegal Bangladeshis are coming to Assam and creating problems for us. Now, what did Ulfa do? As a terrorist outfit, it went to Bangladesh and took support. They went to Bangladesh illegally. Here in Assam, they were targeting Bangladeshi migrants and they themselves went and took shelter in Bangladesh. Why? Because Bangladesh was ready to give support to them. By 1970s, 80s, we had a hostile government. Bangladeshi army was in power, which was pro-Pakistan. Later, Bangladesh Nationalist Party won in 1990s and formed a hostile government, which was also favoring Pakistan. Throughout this period, from 1970s to 2009, during those 30 plus years, Bangladesh was very hostile to India and it was pro-Pakistan. So as Bangladesh gave support to these insurgents, they readily accepted the support. They set up terror sanctuaries. They got a safe haven here to hide from Indian forces. They would get training as well from Bangladeshi forces. And there was Pakistani involvement. There was ISI's involvement. ISI was looking to bleed India through 1,000 cuts to take revenge on India for 1971. It would not only sponsor Khalistan movement and terrorism in Kashmir later, even before that, it was already backing Ulfa and other insurgent groups of Northeast India via Bangladesh. So, Ulfa got tremendous state support from Bangladeshi and Pakistani state agencies. It easily got access to funds, weapons. It got involved in organized crime. It established contacts with criminal networks and even with other insurgents. It got involved in drugs trafficking, arms trafficking, human trafficking. It tied up with other notorious groups like NSCN and NDFB. These insurgents have worked together as well. Naga insurgents, Assamese insurgents, Bodo insurgents, they all tied up, right? They would support each other in arranging drugs and funds and in raising finances for their insurgent activities against India. So this was a serious challenge for the very security of the Indian state in the Northeast. So this threat persisted all the way from 1979 till 2009, right? So India extended AFSPA. Assam was declared as a disturbed area under Disturbed Areas Act. And under these special powers, the Indian Army, along with Assam Rifles, launched major counter-insurgency operations targeting Ulfa. So this is how the state of Assam and the larger Northeast region was destabilized by this notorious insurgent outfit. India later designated Ulfa as a terrorist organization because of its large-scale violence that it carried out in Assam and across the region. Finally, India managed to bring down the outfit in 2009-2010 when a friendly government was finally elected in Bangladesh. So the return of Sheikh Hasina as the Prime Minister, the return of the Awami League government was a crucial turning point as far as Northeast insurgency is concerned. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and her party have single-handedly turned the situation in the Northeast by helping India. Because Sheikh Hasina is the daughter of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, right, who received tremendous support from India during the liberation movement. Following Mujibur Rahman's assassination by the Bangladeshi army, it was India which protected Sheikh Hasina. Large part of Sheikh Hasina's growing up life was spent in India under Indian protection. So she is eternally grateful to what India has done for the Bangladesh liberation movement and even personally to her family. Many times, India saved the life of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman when Pakistan and other pro Pakistan elements were trying to assassinate Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. So, there is that eternal bond between Sheikh Hasina's family, the Awami League party, and India. So, as soon as she came to power, she delivered on India's biggest concern, which was Northeast insurgency. She destroyed the terrorist infrastructure built in Bangladesh by the previous governments and by Pakistan. The safe havens were decimated. The financing networks were crushed. Supply of weapons were curbed. And the top leaders were arrested and handed over to India. When it comes to Ulfa, one of the top leader was Arvind Rajkova. Arvind Rajkova and other top terrorists of Ulfa, they were hiding in Bangladesh. They were all arrested through joint operations of India and Bangladesh, and he was handed over to India. Other leaders like Anup Chetia and few others, these were the student leaders, the radicals, who had started the movement in 1979. They were all hiding in Bangladesh for many years. They were all apprehended by Bangladesh based on intelligence shared by India, and they were handed over to India in 2009-2010. This is what broke Ulfa. It brought Ulfa down to its knees, and in 2011, it signed the suspension of operations agreement with the government of India and government of Assam. Suspension of operations is nothing but a ceasefire agreement. It's a commitment that all the sides will stop their operations. India commits that we will stop the counterinsurgency operations. The insurgent group also commits to give up violence and to even give up the weapons which was held in a security camp guarded by Indian forces. So this is the beginning for a peace process. To initiate a peace process, to work out a peace accord, the group has to first surrender and sign a suspension of operations agreement, which is basically a call for a ceasefire. All the cadres of the group, along with their weapons, right, they will be stored in a base camp under the watch of Indian forces. All right. So only if they agree to this, that is, we don't arrest the cadres, we don't take away their weapons entirely, but they just have to come to a base camp, which is monitored by Indian forces, guarded by Indian forces, right? They have to stay within the base camp that we have set up and place all their weapons within the base camp. The government will not take it away, right? Because we don't want to scare the insurgent group that we are targeting them, crushing them. So they're just asked to surrender and base themselves out of this security camp, which is guarded by Indian forces, to ensure that there is no return to violence. This sets the stage for a peace process. It results in a dialogue between the representatives of the insurgent group and the government representatives. And finally, it helps in striking a peace deal. So this negotiation went on for 12 years. It started in 2011, and recently, just a few days back, India has struck a peace deal with Ulfa. Is that clear? So the former insurgents like Arvind Rajkova, Anup Chetia, they were all present when the deal was signed with the Indian government and the government of Assam. So according to the peace deal, they have agreed to fully surrender. They've agreed to give up their insurgent war. They'll surrender their weapons. The cadres will surrender completely. In return, India is guaranteeing better development, some additional funds for the development of Assam, right? So such promises have been made by India, and the old cases against some of the insurgents will be dropped. But if they are involved in major acts of terrorism, if they have been involved in heinous crimes like terrorism, murders, kidnapping, rapes, then they will not be spared. Those cases will continue. They'll not be released. Only those cadres who have just been part of the organization, those who have not been involved in any heinous crimes, only they will be spared. Only the cases against them will be dropped. But the rest who have committed major acts of terrorism, major acts of criminal offenses, they will be targeted, they'll be prosecuted. So government of India is promising better development, better access to funds, right? And a kind of a surrender policy has been worked out, and ULFA has accepted the deal, and this is a very big success for India. It took almost 12 years to finalize the deal, and recently the Modi government has announced the peace deal with ULFA. We don't know all the terms of the deal because it is still a classified confidential document, but based on media reports, we can say that these are the basic terms of the deal, that ULFA has agreed to surrender, lay down its arms completely, right? And in return, India is promising better development to fulfill the rights of the Assamese and to also deal with cross-border illegal migration, because that was the root cause which started this movement, correct? But however, there is one faction. There is always a faction in Northeast India, right? We had a faction with NSCN, that is the Kaplang faction, which has not surrendered. With ULFA as well, there is one faction called ULFA I, ULFA Independent. This is a faction headed by another notorious insurgent called Paresh Barua. He was also one of the founder of ULFA in 1979. He was with Arvind Rajkoa, Anup Chetia and others when ULFA was founded. But later, as ideological differences developed between them, the group had split. So this remains an active outfit. This faction called ULFA Independent, headed by Paresh Barua, it is still active along the Myanmar-China border. This is where the insurgent group, the terror group, has established a base. So Indian agencies believe that Paresh Barua is getting direct support from Chinese intelligence. It's believed that even today, Chinese intelligence agencies are providing funds and support and even weapon supply to allow this faction of ULFA to target India, to continue the insurgent war against India. You might have read that there have been few incidents in Arunachal Pradesh, that few workers at an oil plant were kidnapped. Few companies in Assam and Arunachal Pradesh have been threatened recently. These incidents have been carried out by this group, the Paresh Barua faction called ULFA Independent. So this group has not surrendered. It's not part of the peace deal. Please remember this. It has not surrendered. It has opposed any talks with India. It is not part of the peace deal that was signed recently. It's operating somewhere along the Myanmar-China border. Indian intelligence agencies have tracked Paresh Barua in the Yunnan province of China. It's a border province that borders Myanmar and Arunachal Pradesh. So along these border areas between Myanmar and China, ULFA Independent has it has a presence. It has the terror camps located over here. A few cadres are still working for Paresh Barua, and Paresh Barua has been spotted as well by Indian agencies in the Yunnan province of China. So India firmly believes that there is a Chinese hand, a direct Chinese involvement in backing ULFA Independent and Paresh Barua. So this is the status of ULFA's insurgency against India. Is that clear? Please let me know if you have any doubts. This completes my discussion on one insurgency in Assam, which is ULFA's insurgency. If this is clear, please let me know. If you have questions, you can ask me. Kanchana is asking, sir, did the government of India take too long to take action when there were huge protests by the Assamese? See, the government was responding. Obviously, when violent protests break out, obviously police and security forces will be deployed. It'll get into a very complex situation where police security forces will use force against the protesters, leading to civilian deaths and injuries. That's how the agitation got more complex. It became complicated, and the protest dragged till 1985. Government was making attempts to bring normalcy in Assam, but the protesters weren't willing to bend. Finally, the talks succeeded, and when Assam Accord was finalized, that's when the Assam agitation came to an end. So India tried, but we weren't able to bring down the violence quickly. It dragged for 6 years. The violent protests went on, right? And finally, it ended with Assam Accord. All right. Now, let's talk about few other insurgencies that we have seen in Assam. We have completed Ulfa's insurgency with the latest update as well. Now, let's look at some other insurgent movements that Assam has suffered from. I want to talk about few minor insurgent movements that have mainly demanded for statehood or more autonomy. See, insurgency can be of different types. It need not always be a separatist movement. Ulfa and NSCN insurgency, those were separatist movements, meaning they wanted full independence. They wanted to break those areas from India and form a separate independent sovereign nation. But there are few insurgent movements in Assam which weren't separatist movements. They were happy in being a part of India. They wanted to be under India's sovereignty. But however, some of them wanted a separate state. They wanted to break away from Assam because some ethnic and tribal groups, they felt dominated by the Assamese. Some of the minority ethnic tribes, they felt that they were discriminated, oppressed by the Assam government, which was dominated by the native Assamese. So either they wanted a separate state away from Assam but within India, or they wanted more autonomy within the Indian constitutional framework. The creation of Telangana by force, it added momentum to such statehood movements led by various ethnic groups. Is that clear? Because Telangana was created by force because of violent protests across Andhra Pradesh, across Hyderabad. This put a lot of political pressure on the government of India to eventually bifurcate Telangana from Andhra Pradesh. Even before that, there are precedents where the government has budged under force and met some of the demands. So, inspired by these events, a few tribes and ethnic groups in Assam who have been threatened by the Assamese, they have conducted an insurgent war against India, but their demand was not separatism. They didn't want a separate country. They wanted a separate state. Or some of them wanted more autonomy within the constitution. So which are these groups? Some Bodo outfits, the Karbis from Karbi Anglong district, the Dimasas, and the Koch Rajbanshis. These four minor ethnic groups and tribes, they have led different insurgencies. We will discuss Bodo insurgency separately because Bodo insurgency is a larger topic and a more complex topic. Because there have been few Bodo insurgent groups like NDFB, which was a separatist movement. It was a notorious terrorist movement which waged war against India for many decades. And its goal was to separate Bodo areas from India. So NDFB does not fall under this category. There were other Bodo groups which we are going to study in the next part, such as the BLTF. I will explain this later, don't worry. All right. There were a few Bodo political groups as well. They just wanted more autonomy or they wanted a separate state. These were statehood movements and movements for autonomy. The Karbis in Karbi Anglong, they also took up an armed struggle to fight for more autonomy, and initially they were demanding a separate state away from Assam, but within India's sovereignty. Dimasas had a similar demand for statehood and autonomy. Koch Rajbanshis from West Bengal and Assam region near Siliguri, they had a similar movement led by KLO, Kamtapur Liberation Organization. This was another armed insurgent group. Initially, it was calling for independence from India because The Koch Rajbanshis, they belong to the Kamtapur kingdom, the Kamtapur princely state, which existed here in parts of West Bengal and Assam. Initially, they were hesitant when the region merged with India. So later, some of the radical elements amongst the Koch Rajbanshis, they had led an armed movement demanding the creation of Kamtapur as a separate country. It was a separatist pro-independence movement. But later, their demands changed. They were willing to settle for statehood, or they were willing to settle for more constitutional autonomy. Now, recently, there has been a big development with KLO. The KLO was a notorious separatist group at one point, waging a war against India. It was getting support from other insurgents in Northeast, from ULFA, from NSCN, and from NDFB. Back in 1980s, 1990s, the KLO had connections with these other insurgent groups. It would get training and arms from these other insurgent outfits. But as India targeted the group, as our security forces hit the leadership of KLO and their networks, the group had shifted base to Myanmar. The leader was hiding in Myanmar for many years, right? And we had neutralized the threat from KLO. Parallelly, we tried to meet the political demands of Koch Rajbanshis, and accordingly, some degree of autonomy has been given. So especially Bodos, Karbis, and Dimasas, they have been provided a higher degree of autonomy. Constitutional autonomy has been given to them. Under the 6th schedule of the Indian Constitution, right? The tribal districts in Assam, in Meghalaya, in Mizoram, and in Tripura, these 4 northeastern states, they enjoy a special status as far as the tribal districts are concerned. Just like 5th schedule provides for scheduled areas, the tribal areas in the other states, which provides for special administrative provisions to look after the tribal welfare. The 6th schedule deals with the tribal districts of these 4 states, Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, Mizoram. So in the state of Assam, 3 minor ethnic groups and tribes, they have been provided with constitutional autonomy under the 6th schedule. Meaning, these tribal districts are set up as autonomous district councils. They have a very high degree of constitutional autonomy within the Indian Constitution. These autonomous councils will hold separate elections. All right? Only the local tribal members can contest these elections. Regular political parties cannot participate in these elections. This is to minimize any interference from the state and the center. Because the demand here is local autonomy at the grassroots. So local elections are held. This is like a third government, a third tier of the government. These tribal districts, which have constitutional protection, right? They are provided with autonomous district councils, which look after the administration, the welfare of that particular district. So separate elections are held at the grassroots, where only the local tribe members can contest, and this gives them the opportunity to look after their own administration and welfare. It basically decentralizes administration and welfare in the tribal pockets of the country. That is the beauty of the Indian Constitution. That is the flexibility provided by the 6th schedule. So few specific powers are delegated to them. Few legislative powers, executive, financial powers, and even some judicial powers are delegated to them. So they can make some of the local laws to manage the land, to handle revenue. They can raise some local taxes as well. They play a role in implementing government schemes. Laws of the state legislature and the parliament will not automatically apply here. They have to be approved by the autonomous council. Because this allows the tribal community to look after their own governance block out any laws which could interfere with their tribal rights and customs. The whole idea is to help the tribal community protect their rights and their cultural identity. Even with regard to certain judicial powers, right? The powers are delegated, autonomy is given. Because some tribal communities have different social practices and customs and traditions. Some of the ethnic groups here, they are matriarchal or matrilineal, where the women is the head of the household, not the male. Right? Usually in India, we have a patriarchal society, a male-dominated society, where property inheritance, right, follows the patriarchal line. But in the Northeast, there are many tribes and ethnic groups where the society is matriarchal or matrilineal. That is, the women is the head of the household. So their marriage laws are different. Their laws related to inheritance, adoption, divorce, all these are different customs. So to respect their faith, their culture, their customs, and to help them protect their language, this autonomy is provided. So that interference from the state and the center is limited. Only in few subjects, center and state will exercise authority. Like center will of course have rights over defense, security, communication, and even external affairs. The state will have some limited powers in some areas, but all the other subjects are devolved to the autonomous council. Like local education, healthcare, even some local taxation powers, implementing government schemes and initiatives, they're all devolved. They are also given additional funds to promote grassroots governance. These autonomous district councils, comprising of local members who are elected, they can provide for local administration, thus protecting tribal rights and tribal welfare. So in Assam, there are 3 such autonomous councils. The Bodoland Territorial Council, BTC, which administers the Bodo districts. Karbi Anglong Autonomous Council, administering the Karbi Anglong district. So this satisfied the demand of the Krabis. The Dima Hasao Autonomous District Council, it satisfied the demand of the Dimasas. So that is how these armed insurgencies were ended, by giving them constitutional autonomy under the 6th schedule. So some Bodo groups were having a demand for autonomy and statehood, which was satisfied. Karbi and Dimasa armed groups were also having such demands. They were met through the flexibility of the Indian Constitution under the 6th schedule. So there are 3 such autonomous district councils in Assam. In Meghalaya, the Garo, Kasi, Jaintia tribes, they also have their separate autonomous district councils under 6th schedule. Similarly, there are autonomous councils in Mizoram and Tripura. Please find out the names of these autonomous councils. Can you tell me how many are there? Under 6th schedule, if you take all the 4 states, do you know how many total autonomous district councils are there in India? Anyone? Himanshu has given the right answer. Very good. There are a total of 10 autonomous district councils. Even Jia has given the right answer. If you take all the 4 states, right, there are a total of 10. I already mentioned 6 of them. Bodoland, Karbi Anglong, Dima Hasao in Assam. Garo, Kasi, Jaintia autonomous councils in Meghalaya. And the rest are in Mizoram and Tripura. So take this as a homework. Take this as an exercise, as an assignment. Find out all the 10 autonomous district councils and please go through the points I have added over here. It explains the 6th schedule provision and some of the shortcomings under the 6th schedule. One major shortcoming is that the elections are irregular. Elections are not held as promised, as frequently as promised. The village councils at the village level, they are constituted on an ad hoc basis. This is another problem. The village councils represent the last tier of governance at the village level. They function under the autonomous district council, which is the district level administrative authority. But these village councils are very ad hoc in their constitution and in their functioning. They're not established frequently. They're not replaced with new members. They don't function as envisioned. elections are not held properly on time, and there is a lot of state government interference. One problem is that these autonomous councils are still dependent on the state for funds. So if money is under the control of the state governments interfere with the functioning of the councils. And political parties have misused this to spread the political influence as well. Even though they are not supposed to interfere, the state level and national parties, all of them, right? They have promoted their own candidates within the tribal community, like amongst Bodos, amongst Karbis, amongst Dimasaus, different political parties from the state and from the center at the national level. They've all interfered with the functioning of the councils. They will back their own candidates to indirectly introduce their political influence. The state government, whichever party comes into power, controls these councils by controlling the finances. So what's the point of the autonomy if the council is dependent on the state? Right? The state can manipulate the functioning of the autonomous council. And the village councils at the village level are not functioning properly, and elections are not being held properly. These are some shortcomings that are present. So please go through the points. This is a polity topic, but still I'm explaining it because it's related to internal security. So you can get a question either in Indian polity or in internal security related to 6th schedule and how it is connected with the security situation here. The 6th schedule has given us the flexibility to solve insurgencies, to work out peace deals by providing constitutional autonomy, and that is the flexibility of the Indian Constitution. So you should know the basic provisions. You should know the shortcomings as well. All right. So that's why I've given you this explanation. Please go through this again, go through the key points and connect this with whatever you've studied in Indian polity. So that will complete your understanding of these autonomous district councils. Now, coming to the last point for today, I want to raise one last point. It's related to the KLO, the Kamtapur Liberation Organization. I told you that the Koch Rajbanshis from West Bengal and Assam, right, near the Siliguri corridor, they are the ones who founded this insurgent movement. Essentially, it was a separatist movement fighting for independence from India. They wanted to break this region at the strategic Siliguri corridor and form an independent nation. It had tied up with other insurgent groups. It was getting a lot of support from ULFA, NSCN, and NDFB. Right? This was in 1980s, 1990s. But later, India targeted the group. We weakened the outfit, and this group ran away into Myanmar. The leader as well ran away into Myanmar and was hiding in Myanmar. But recently, there has been a very big development. A few months ago, the KLO leader who was hiding in Myanmar, he entered India and he has surrendered. He crossed the border, entered into the Indian side, reached a security camp of Assam Rifles, and he voluntarily surrendered. After that, it has been reported that he has been shifted to Delhi. In a very covert, secretive manner, Indian intelligence agencies have shifted him to Delhi. The speculation is that this was a planned surrender, meaning Indian agencies were working with KLO. We were weakening the KLO and offering a peace deal in order to settle this conflict permanently. Because the Modi government has accelerated the peace process. We have signed a deal with the Bodo groups. The third Bodo Accord was signed 3 years ago in 2020. Right? That is my next topic. I think tomorrow we'll start. Then recently we signed the deal with ULFA, which I explained. We have struck a deal with UNLF from Manipur. We are engaging with the Naga groups, including NSC and IM, for a Naga peace deal. So the Modi government has really made it a priority to bring these insurgencies to an end, and it has fast-tracked all the peace processes. So last year, a few months back, when KLO leader came to India on his own, he crossed the border and surrendered. It was not just by accident. It was not just a voluntary surrender. The speculation is that I mean, there's no official word, there's no guarantee on what's happening, because of course the government will keep it secretive, because this is a very sensitive matter, it's a delicate issue. But media reports are speculating that Indian intelligence agencies have weakened KLO. I mean, over the years we have done it. Our security forces have targeted the group. The group is no longer able to operate like before. We have cut off their funds, access to weapons. It's been cornered into Myanmar as a small outfit. Now we want to permanently resolve the conflict. So maybe the government would have reached out to KLO, the leadership which is hiding in Myanmar, and we might have offered a peace deal. So that is the reason why the leader has come to India, surrendered, and he has been shifted to Delhi according to several reports, which means peace talks are undergoing. I mean, it's underway. The talks between the government and the KLO leaders is going on. Maybe after elections or before elections, we might see the announcement of a deal with KLO as well. So speculation is that India might agree for constitutional autonomy. Maybe Koch Rajbanshi region, right, the Kamtapur region might be given constitutional autonomy. Some reports even say that a separate state might be created by carving it out from Assam. We don't know. So please watch out for this topic, right? The KLO movement, the ongoing talks, which are being held very secretively. Maybe sometime later we'll get to know about it. The announcements will be made officially. So it's a very important topic that you need to track. Understood? So recently the KLO leader has surrendered, who was hiding in Myanmar. Even though it's a minor group today, it did pose a serious threat at one point. We had weakened the group over the last 20, 30 years. So now the peace deal, which reportedly has been taken up, represents a big progress, and this could maybe end another insurgency against India. So these are the minor insurgencies seen in Assam, mainly for statehood and more constitutional autonomy, right? So Bodo, Krabi, and the Karbi and Dimasa insurgency was ended by giving constitutional autonomy, and now we are negotiating with the Kamtapur movement, that is the Koch Rajbanshi movement. The last topic under Assam is Bodo insurgency. I think today we are running out of time. It's already 7:50, because I need at least a good 20, 25 minutes to cover this topic, maybe. I think it's better we pick it up tomorrow. Let's not rush through. We have Manipur after this, Mizoram and Tripura as well. So let's pick it up tomorrow and we'll close it in the first half of tomorrow. So please note down that tomorrow we are starting at 7 a.m. We're starting a little early because this would be the extra class. Today was just a compensation class for what we lost over the previous weekend. Tomorrow, I would be taking an extra class from 7 a.m. itself. So please join early and stay with me till the end of the day. I know it's a long weekend, it's a very stressful weekend, but don't worry, I'll give you enough breaks. Right? Let's have a discussion just for 1.5 hours, a little around that, and we'll try to cover all these topics. So let me know if you have any doubts, any questions. I would like to take up all of them, and we can stop after that. We can resume this tomorrow. We'll talk about Bodo insurgency tomorrow and finish the remaining topics under Northeast insurgency. Meghana is asking, sir, what's the name of this KLO leader? You don't have to remember the names, not necessary. See, I mentioned the names just to make it relatable so that you can easily understand. I mentioned Isaac Muiwa, Kaplang, Paresh Barua, Arvind Rajkova. I was just giving the names for your better understanding. UPSC will not expect you to remember these names, not needed. I think Pooja has the same question. Sir, should we name these leaders in the answers? Not required. If you remember, well and good. Nothing wrong with it. If you remember the names correctly, you can mention that. If you don't, it's fine. So don't focus too much on the names of these insurgents. Prithvi is asking, sir, what's the current situation of Ulfa Independent led by Paresh Barua? As I explained, it is still an active insurgent group. It is still continuing the war against India. It is operating along the Myanmar-China border, mostly receiving support from China and still trying to target India. So Paresh Barua has rejected the peace deal that was signed a few days back. So his faction of Ulfa is not part of the peace process. Vikas, by the way, has given the name of the KLO leader. You're right, Vikas. His name is Jibon Singha. also called Tamir Das. Vritika is asking, sir, Kokrajhar riots, was it related to Assam? Yes. The Kokrajhar riots, which I had mentioned here in a previous slide. Yeah, here I have mentioned that in 2012, there was a major communal riot in Kokrajhar. Okay, I will discuss this tomorrow. That's why I skipped this point, because it's related to Bodo insurgency. So tomorrow, when we start with the Bodo insurgent movement, you will understand who are the Bodos, where they are found, what's their demand, how did this movement start. There I will explain the Kokrajhar riots, the communal angle present here, and what impact it has had on India. This is a very important and a big topic, because recently we have ended Bodo insurgency in 2020. In total, we have signed 3 accords with Bodos. There was the first Bodo Accord in 1992, then the second accord in 2002, 2003. Now in 2020, we have signed the third accord, right? So it's because of these 3 peace agreements that we have brought Bodo insurgency to an end. Let's understand this tomorrow. Don't worry, I'll explain this in detail. So yeah, to answer Vritika's question, the Kokrajhar riots in Assam is related to this, related to the Bodo topic, which I'll discuss tomorrow. Prithvi is asking, did government apply ASPA because of Assam agitation? It wasn't because of Assam agitation, it was because of Ulfa and Bodo insurgency. As Ulfa insurgency broke out in Assam, to deal with insurgency, ASPA was introduced. Because Assam agitation was a law and order problem. To deal with law and order situation, ASPA is not used. To deal with insurgency and terrorism, that too in border areas, that is where ASPA is implemented. Ghulam Mustafa says, sir, enemy within the state is the most dangerous. Yes, you're absolutely correct. If you remember last weekend, I had mentioned this. We took the concept from Kautilya's theory. How Kautilya said that internal enemy is the most dangerous threat for the internal security of the state. That's very true. Domestic homegrown movements represent the biggest threat. Ketan has a very interesting question. Sir, do these groups participate in elections? There's something very interesting. It will come up tomorrow. When I come to Mizoram and Tripura, I'll explain that. Okay, please wait. But to answer the question now, yes. Once these groups surrender, once they sign a peace deal, right, they become part of mainstream politics, which means they become a political party. At one point, it was an insurgent group labeled a terrorist organization, but we allow them to enter mainstream politics and contest elections. That is how you achieve peace. Some of you might question this, that why should we talk to insurgents? Why should we allow them to enter politics? But this is the way for conflict resolution. That's why I said, when we have done this in Northeast India, why not in Jammu and Kashmir? Everyone gets triggered when we say that we should talk to separatists in Kashmir. We should allow them to enter mainstream politics. Right? There you're getting triggered because you're looking at it as a communal issue. If you move away from that biased view, you will realize that we have followed that approach in Northeast India with multiple organizations. Now, I'll add a very important point here. The Ulfa peace deal, which Modi government itself has signed, allows Ulfa to become a political party. Is that clear? Ulfa can join mainstream politics in the future. So you will see insurgents like Arvind Rajko and others entering mainstream politics. So this has happened in Mizoram, in Tripura as well. Previous governments, when they struck the Mizo Peace Accord and settled the conflict in Tripura, we ensured the deal allows the insurgent groups to enter mainstream politics. Have you heard about MNF, Mizo National Front? It was an insurgent group labeled as a terrorist organization by India. It was getting support from East Pakistan. But once India defeated MNF and negotiated with MNF, we allowed MNF to become a political party and contest elections. And today, it's a major party in Mizoram. It has won multiple elections. It has formed the state government as well. And again, believe it or not, the then leader of MNF, Pul Laldenga, became the chief minister of Mizoram. So that is how conflict resolution works. That's how you can end such conflicts. So if this is followed in Northeast, the question is, why not in Kashmir? Right? But again, as I said, both are seen with a different prism, with a different angle. That is why these issues come up. Himanshu is asking, in under autonomous district council, center has the power of communication. What does communication mean? See, communication refers to telephone, telegraph, mobile, internet communication, because this has to be a central subject in order to ensure uniform communication standards. Right, center retains the subject of communication, defense, and other important issues and subjects, because you can't have different communication standards in different states and districts. So that remains largely under the central government. It's a union subject basically. So when we say communication, right, the subject is referring to different technologies through which communication is established. Prithvi is asking, if some insurgent wants to surrender, but if he has done some brutal activity, then does he not surrender? Is government do something for surrender? Prithvi, please frame your question properly. It's not grammatically correct, so I'm not able to understand what you're asking. Okay, last question. Ritika is asking, sir, with rising instability in Myanmar, do NSCN-K and Ulfa Independent pose a threat? See, instability in Myanmar is definitely of concern. It's because of this reason. There are so many insurgent groups having a base in Myanmar. Plus, refugees from Myanmar are trickling into India. The latest ethnic violence in Manipur is related to what's happened in Myanmar. We'll study that tomorrow. So definitely, yes, the instability in Myanmar worries India. It might create a situation where Ulfa Independent, NSCN Kaplang might get more support. They might be able to operate freely because Myanmar military is not concentrating on them. Myanmar's military is concentrating on the other rebel groups and insurgent groups which are targeting the military in Myanmar. So this is bad news for India. That's why we are very worried since the last 2-3 years. So we might see a further revival of insurgency due to the situation in Myanmar. We have already felt the impact in Manipur. Whatever happened last year in Manipur, what's happening right now, it is related, at least in some way, to what happened in Myanmar. There has been a flow of refugees which has led to that situation, and we'll study that tomorrow. Mitali is asking, in autonomous districts, will there be district magistrates and collectors? Yes, definitely. All India service officers will be deployed here as well. The districts will be, it will be headed by the district collectors or the district magistrates, who is an IAS officer. All right. So guys, let's end the session for today. I think we have covered a lot of important topics. I really hope you guys have liked the session. I hope you have enjoyed it. I hope it was interesting, because otherwise you will not be able to, focus on these important complex topics. I know it can become a little boring because there's a lot of history, background involved, a lot of complex factors involved, but I'm trying to simplify it. And I really hope you have enjoyed and found it interesting, because only then can you really understand and learn all the key concepts and all the key points. So do let me know how it went. We'll meet again tomorrow at 7 a.m. and we'll wrap up the remaining topics under internal security. Once we finish this, it's all small topics. We have few small topics dealing with social media, cybersecurity, money laundering, border security. Let's wrap it up tomorrow, and that will complete our syllabus for internal security. So that's it for today. Thanks for being with me the whole day, and let's meet tomorrow. Till then, good night. Take care.